Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Hen Outdoors podcast. I'm excited to have another guest, another buddy of mine, one of the dynamic duo to the state that's just north of me from New Jersey. We are pleased to have one of the Marsh boys, Brian Paulson. How are you doing tonight, Brian?
Good. How you doing? Glad to be on.
Good, good, good. Have you haven't been out turkey hunting yet, have you? Or your permit hasn't gone into effect yet?
Yeah, I got a D permit. So not next week, but the following. The last 2 weeks of the season, I'll be out.
Okay. Have you been hearing anything up there from anybody that's been out
Oh,
earlier?
they're murdering them right now. It's nuts up here. These birds are so fired up. It's unbelievable.
Damn. Kind of mad I haven't got to use my tags up there yet. Well, they
What tags you
expired.
got?
I got A and B periods, so they expire tomorrow. But
Yeah, your A week's already, or your period's already expired. Your B's done tomorrow.
yeah, so. But I've been fighting, well, not fighting, but struggling with birds down here in Maryland. Just the wind's been kind of kicking my ass on the weekends.
Yeah, they're tricky birds. They're smart, smarter than I ever thought they were.
So you and your buddy Ryan, who's not with us tonight, unfortunately, do Marsh Boys. How did you guys start doing that?
So we started in August of 2022. So to give you a little backstory, I had always hunted. I had always hunted. I grew up small game squirrel hunting with my dad, and running coon dogs with my cousin, fishing a whole lot, catfishing, and when I got my driver's license when I turned 16, that's when I really started hunting. Hunting. I rode bulls for 7 years, so that took up a lot of my time. I come home in the wintertime and hunt. And never a big deer hunter. I got a couple deer killed, one behind me and all that. But I got into waterfowl hunting, when I got my driver's license, and that spiraled. And then me and Ryan had been friends, since we were 13, 14 years old. We ended up going to the same vocational school. You'd think he was a year younger than I am in high school. Uh, he had gone squirrel hunting with me a couple times, followed me around. We always went fishing. He grew up on the boat, so he had that part of the whole duo. And then in spring of 2022, Ryan had gone off to college, come back, got a union job, and he heard all of his bosses talking. And he came to me and he was like, I've had an epiphany. Like I don't do anything. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you raise cows, and at the time I was raising bucking bulls, which he had kind of gotten in with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he goes, you raise the bulls, you road bulls, you hunt, you do all this stuff. I don't have any stories. And I said, all right. And we had always kind of talked about a podcast, just because we would get Saturday nights, we'd get drunk in the barn and just bullshit, just talk just about everything. It wasn't even about hunting, just anything and everything. And, so we had that talk in, like I said, late spring of 22, and then midsummer of 22, I called. So originally, Marsh Boys, the podcast, was hosted by me, Ryan, Jimmy Riley, and Tyler Sogling. Um, I called, actually, the first two podcasts was just me, Ryan, and Jimmy. Tyler got added in later because we ended up buying four mics, or four mic stands, and Tyler bought a mic and joined. But I called up Jimmy and Ryan, and I said, hey, I just bought four mics. We're going to meet at Jimmy's house next weekend, and we're going to do this thing. Well, we set it up with three laptops, three mics, no synchronizing. Nobody knew exactly what they were doing at all. Uh, yeah, I think we recorded the first episode three times, and it's just snowballed from there. We had so much fun recording the first 20 or so episodes. We actually didn't even have a guest on till, well, I guess our buddy Dave came on, and then we had Jeff Coates on as our first, big guest. But that wasn't until episode 27 or 30, somewhere around there. Um, and then not shortly after we started uploading the podcast in August, late August, we started the Instagram, the TikTok. The YouTube is fairly new thing. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we got started. It was just talked about, and Ryan wanted to do something that, he could eventually tell his grandkids about one day. And, he loved the fishing deal. So he wanted to get into hunting. And I didn't, I mean, I had a bunch of people to hunt with, but nobody really consistently I hunted with. So I figured, why not my best friend? And, you know, damn near 3 years later, we're still doing it and continuing to, gradually grow.
Hmm. What is your guys' favorite thing to hunt?
Oh, by far waterfowl. Um,
Well,
Me personally, I like the goose hunt. Ryan likes the duck hunt.
oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yep, Marsh Boys is primarily waterfowl based.
Hmm.
We do everything. That's why we went with Marsh Boys. But it's mainly September to January. We're mainly goose hunting, but duck hunting just as much.
Hmm. Do you guys have a preference for one or the other? Why, or just one likes one better than the other?
Um, I couldn't really speak on why Ryan. I'm sure we've talked about it on the podcast before. I like goose hunting because it's a little more intimate to me.
Hmm.
People may say duck hunting's more intimate, and that's obviously, that's just my opinion on it. Um, the calling aspect. I love calling. I've just started last year. I've done two goose calls or goose calling competitions. I just got into that. Um, yeah, and I think that's why I like turkey hunting a lot now too. I just got into that a couple years ago. But yeah, with goose hunting, it's a calling. You're talking to birds constantly. With duck hunting, it's more like, hey, I'm over here. Come check me out. With goose calling, it's a little more intimate. Um, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint an exact reason. I just prefer killing geese in a hayfield, I guess.
What would you say is the best thing about hunting if you could explain it to somebody?
Ooh, that's a heavy one. The best part about hunting. So, I guess there's a couple different aspects to go about that. You could talk about persistence, especially with goose hunting. You're persistent on scouting all week.
Hmm.
With deer hunting, you're persistent on putting the time in the stand. Um, with running dogs, you're persistent in staying up to the crack of dawn every night, getting your dogs in the woods.
Hmm.
You can talk about patience. I love the patience part of it. Waiting for them geese to finish the last 10 yards to get a even better shot on them, letting the ducks make one more round, letting that buck walk 5 more yards in. Uh, you could talk about the romance of it, the act of fooling an animal, so to speak, or in the case of deer hunting, the act of getting in the animal's life and figuring out its cycle, figuring out its repetitions. I don't know. I've never been asked that before. The best part about hunting, you know what it is. Me and Ryan just talked about this last week on our ride home from work. It's the sunrise. It's absolutely the sunrise. It is the only to me, it is the only place on earth you can see God's creation at work.
Hmm.
That
Exactly.
it There's no better sunrise than decoys floating over the water or autumn leaves hitting the ground.
Hmm.
Whatever your preference is.
I would even go a little bit farther to that and say not just the sunrise, but yes, the sunrise can be added into this, but I say when everything just goes still for a second and it just feels like the world's on pause.
That's why I say that. So that was what me and Ryan talked about. Was like, I told Ryan, I said every hunt we go on, I said I've seen it up in New York hunting Long Island, New York, 30-mile-an-hour winds out on the bay, and for 5 seconds everything goes calm.
Hmm.
The sun's coming up over the deer woods. Squirrels may be running around. Does walking off in the distance, and then for maybe a minute or two, everything's just quiet, or the breaks between the wind blowing out in the goose field.
Hmm.
I don't think there's much. There's People need to experience that.
So you guys do. the podcast and everything, and I got a couple questions that lean into that a little bit more.
Yeah,
But
ask
what?
anything you want.
I'm getting ready to give you a little bit of a gauntlet here. But what is, because I got some good questions, and I took a little bit of what you guys asked me.
Okay.
If you guys haven't checked it out yet, check out my episode with them on their show at Marsh Boys on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and fill in
Episode 130.
episode 130. Yes, sir. That was a good one. But this is a question you guys asked me. What is one of the best or biggest opportunities you guys have had from doing Marsh Boys that you guys never thought of?
Talking to the people we've talked to. Um,
Really?
so, oh, absolutely. There's a picture right behind the camera, signed picture from Jeff Foyles. There's a decoy right here from Jeff Coates.
Mm-hmm.
There's some hand carved little silhouettes up there from Tucker Sherrod, and a younger kid, and down in Louisiana. We've from Jeff Stanfield of the Big Honker podcast. Obviously, like I said, Jeff Coates has been one of our best friends. Joe Cermelli, big guy in the fishing world, was a host on one of the Meat Eater Podcast Network podcast. I shouldn't be name dropping because I'm going to forget so many. GP Calls, Teddy Carr from GP Calls. He's an amazing guy. Just Zach Hansen we just had on from the OKS Trapper. Stuff like that. It's just been a whirlwind of seeing all these people all over social media, and then having them on just like me and you were talking right now as friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts. We went hunting with Jeff Coates. I just sent the deposit for our trip this year with Jeff in November. So yeah, just the biggest opportunity's definitely been the people we've talked to, the guests we've had on, the eye-opening conversations we've had through these last 2.5 years. Oh, hey Hunter, you there? There you are.
Yeah, sorry, my dad was calling me.
You're good.
What were you saying before I cut out? I'm sorry.
Nah, no worries. I was just saying, to answer your question, it's just the connections we've made with people over the years. With
Mm-hmm.
Riley, I can't forget Riley. Riley and Lance, two of the most amazing guys in the outdoor world I've met to date.
But yeah, Riley's an amazing guy,
Yeah.
especially from the few times I've been out hunting with him and just cracking jokes with him or just talking like through me and him texting. He's a good dude, and I do concur with that. Like meeting you guys, meeting Riley, meeting different guys from like Creek calls that I've met and done an episode with. I mean, meeting the Mr. Daniel from Only Turkey Fans. Like it's just amazing just to meet and see and talk to guys that you're like, oh wow, that's cool. They have so many followers or this and that on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And it's like, oh, you never think you'd be able to talk to them, but
Mm-hmm.
it's all it takes is a simple hey and a why not, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I had listened to Joe Cermelli did the Bent podcast on Meat Eater. If I think it's still up out there. If you guys haven't listened to it, please go check it out. It's one of the most hilarious fishing podcasts I've ever listened to. He now does Cut and Retie. I actually have his stickers right here on the table. He does his own podcast, Cut and Retie. But when he was with Meat Eater, I listened to his podcast every week till him and the other co-host split. And I was talking to Ryan, and I was like, we should. Joe was the second big guest we had on, so to say. And all I did was hit him up. I was like, hey, I cracked a joke. I made a comment, and I told him how much I love the Bent podcast. And he's from New Jersey, and he was like, yeah, we got to support each other, man. I'll absolutely come on. And it was, I wish we could go back and do it a little better. We were very, very, very wet behind the ear on that one.
Yeah, a little green on things.
Little green on things, so it didn't go as it should. But we still made the best of it. I think that one is on the new podcast schedule. So if you guys check out Spotify, it might be on there. It's Joe Cermelli. I'm not sure. I know there's a lot of older podcasts I wasn't able to upload with the new system a couple years ago. We did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Moeller Chokes. I'm pro staffed on Moeller Chokes, and that wouldn't have been possible without Marsh Boys. Marsh Boys isn't. It's just me, but still.
Yeah. Joe Trinelli, he did Das Boat that one season, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
I was thinking that's who that was. Speaking of Meat Eater, later on down the line, we're gonna have somebody from Meat Eater come on. I'm not gonna name drop or say yet, but just to build a little bit of anticipation for people. So that
There you go.
I'm excited for that. That's gonna be a fun, interesting, and I have a lot of good questions for him. But no. So back to spin gears back to Turkey a little bit. Um, do you have any ambitions on getting a slam or going to get the 49 at all at some point?
Nah, not really. Nah, that's.
No.
I like the turkey hunt. I do. I honestly, to be completely honest, I love to film turkey hunts more than I like the turkey hunt.
Hmm.
I haven't had the opportunity. The past couple weekends I've been busy. The next future weekends I've been busy. We got a catfish tournament Saturday. I'm judging a bull riding the following weekend, and then I think it's like one more Saturday, and I think we've got something planned the 17th. So, yeah, I haven't been turkey hunting, and I really, really enjoy calling and filming turkey hunts. That's been something that's been really cool lately. Especially, I tried self filming. It's a waste of time. God, that was awful. I was spooking birds at like 60 yards, 70 yards without even knowing it, not knowing where the sun's set up compared to the camera lens, or trying to adjust tripods while birds are gobbling, and it was just a mess. But if I could sit back behind, like I filmed all of Ryan's hunts last year, and I think I filmed a hunt for my buddy Zach as well last year, and it went good. Just nothing really worth uploading.
Yeah. If you could pick any turkey in the out of all of them to go hunt, which one would you want to hunt?
Goulds. I
If
think Goulds are the prettiest looking birds.
really.
Yeah, yeah, they got that nice cream color on the fan that almost looks white.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to walk after them.
Th- those are a close second to my first. My first is Osceola down in Florida.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would be cool as well.
The jungle birds that have all the different dark colors on them and stuff.
Yep.
So aside from hunting, you guys do a lot of trapping.
Yeah, yeah. We got into trapping 2 years ago, and we got some furs on the wall now. There's a possum hanging right there. I got an otter this year in the closet, getting ready to go to the taxidermist. That you said in the beginning what we love to do the most is waterfowl, and that's 100% true. A very close second now is trapping. Graduating from my first to my second year in trapping this past season has been mind blowing and eye opening.
Hmm.
I've learned so much more about the woods. I've seen a lot of things that I never thought I would get to see. There's a post on the Marsh Boys account of some owls screeching and calling back and forth, and 26 years spent my life in the woods, never heard that.
Hmm.
And I just happened to be checking traps one day after work, when I would normally never be in the woods, and there's owls talking to each other 40 yards from me. One thing I never thought I would do is trap an otter. It was never even a forethought in my mind that I would trap an otter until I got my trapping license.
Hmm.
That's hands down the coolest thing I've ever done in the outdoor world is trap that otter. Um, you learn so much about the outdoors when you're trapping. I think it's something that every avid outdoorsman hunter should get into.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just got my course done, so I'm gonna
That's awesome.
start getting into it and start. Hopefully, I might. I don't know how out of state works up in Jersey, but I'm thinking about applying for an otter and another if they have any other apply trap permits up there. So that way, if it's like a weekend or something, I could just come up and check them, and we could maybe do something like that up there.
Yeah, beaver and otter.
Yeah.
Mhm. But
What's your guys' favorite thing to trap?
me personally, is raccoons. That's all I trapped my first trapping year. So last year, the only thing I trapped was raccoons. I didn't have any bycatches. The possums are a bycatch of raccoon trapping for me anyway. I set mainly dog-proof traps. The only cable restraints I've ever set was my 3 otter cable restraints, and the third one I set is the one I caught. So, and speaking of that, I always, every time I talk about the otter, I got to mention Colby Etherton, the coyote man. We've had him on a few times on the pod, more than a few now. He's a great kid. He's a great guy. You know, a little younger than me. I think he's right between me and Ryan, and he knows his shit. He knows what he's doing and why he does it, how he does it. He knows it all. Um, but yeah, I fell in love with chasing raccoons when I was 14. My cousin bought a red bone coonhound, and we started running dogs. And then I think a year or two later, I ended up buying my own dog, and that's where that stemmed from.
Hmm.
So getting into trapping was a natural progression. It's just actually Ryan gave us the push to get our trapping license. You know, that's something his family did. I have a picture I shouldn't even say years. I just say decades and decades and maybe even a century ago. An old black and white photo of what I would assume is my family somewhere down in North Carolina, you know,
Hmm.
with a bunch of raccoon pelts on a clothesline.
Oh wow.
But yeah, but that's the closest thing to my immediate family that trap. You know, my cousin Big Jimmy, who passed away last year, he was a big trapper, big woodsman, big hunter fisher. He was a taxidermist, all that stuff.
Hmm.
He did the gadwall right there. You know, he trapped, but he was kind of a not distant cousin at all. We were closer than anything. But yeah, he was kind of the closest one to me that trapped, like actually that did trap, and we never talked about it. Ryan came up to me and he was like, "Hey, let's go get our trapping license," and I was all about it. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Let's do it together." New Jersey's trapping course is amazing. It's you know, you got to do your online deal, and then it's a 16-hour course in person. You got to do 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, and they teach you everything. They show you every kind of trap you can use, how to use it, when to use it, why to use it, how to skin and flesh, how to put up fur, all the whole 9 yards. But like I was saying, it's something that with the raccoons, I caught six my first year. So last 2 years ago, 2023, I caught six raccoons out of I'd say 40 trap nights. Um, and just kind of walking around the woods and being like, yeah, I think a raccoon would walk through here.
Hmm.
This year I caught, and like I said, I only caught raccoons my first year. This year I caught 21 raccoons, two possums, and then my otter. I I tried real hard after a fox the last week of the season, but just never panned out. I didn't really put too much time into it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I caught almost four times the amount of raccoons the following year, and then next year, my goal since I started was 30, and I always thought it was unrealistic. And I was going through my pictures in like January. Our trapping season runs November to January or to March, if I remember right. And I'm looking, and I'm like, how many raccoons have I caught? I count, and I'm like, damn, I'm at 15 raccoons. And then that last 2 weeks that I trapped of the season, you know, it just kept adding up. I was catching 2, 3 raccoons a day, and yeah. But like I said, like trapping's become a whole new love for me. I,
Hmm.
I love it, just almost. And I think if I didn't run a dog, I'd love it more than goose hunting.
Really?
Yeah, like it has become like I said, Ryan trapped one raccoon this year. Granted, a lot of things set him back. He didn't have a lot of time, but I trapped probably 60 to 65% of the season this year.
Hmm.
You know, which doesn't say a whole lot to my positive results, but I put a lot of time in trapping this year.
Now I will say when I went out with you to go set and check traps, that's kind of what was the spark that got me into doing it and wanting
Mhm.
to do my course and everything.
I caught a lot of raccoons off that property in 2 weeks.
I've
Hmm.
I've seen.
And a possum. That possum right there came from that property. And no, these two raccoons came from a buddy of mine's property.
Mhm. Now, from your experience, do you see guys that trap do a little bit of everything? Do they just do one certain thing and focus on that? Like, what do you see in that kind of aspect of things?
So I do know a lot of trappers. I'm in a couple Facebook groups in New Jersey, and there's some really passionate trappers in there. I definitely wouldn't say they pick a lane. I would 100% say that trappers are opportunists. Um, a lot of guys that trap aren't new. A lot of guys that trap and talk about trapping are older trappers. and they have everything. So if they're walking a piece of woods and they see coon sign, coyote sign, fox sign, mink sign, whatever, they're going to bring the equipment that they need for everything. I know Colby's favorite thing to catch is coyotes, and he's very good at it. He's also very good at catching raccoons. He's really good at catching foxes. I think he caught almost 150 coons this year, 40 some foxes, 26 or 27 coyotes, if I remember right. Um, Ryan, this year we're gonna try and hit muskrat hard. We're gonna catch our raccoons, and then we're gonna get after some muskrat. Um, I'm definitely a raccoon trapper. Possums are a bycatch. I want to catch a fox or two hopefully more than a fox or two in my lifetime. I'd love to
Mhm.
catch a gray fox, a coyote, all the above. I've caught my otter. I'm going to keep applying I want to become an otter trapper. Granted, that's only once a year, one otter a year if you pull the permit, but it's something I would love to accomplish every year. You have your beaver trappers, guys that really only tackle beaver, mink, muskrat, otter, your water trappers, your land trappers. But to round out, a very long-winded answer, it would be I would say most of the trappers around me are very opportunist. They're going to go after whatever they can go after.
Do you see like a certain kind of style of land trapper use more of one trap versus water trappers, or vice versa, or do you just see them kind of use the gambit of traps?
Well, there's a big differential between water trapping and land trapping. Like you're not going to use cable restraints in water. You're not going to use live traps or dog proofs in water. Water trappers are using conibears. Uh, Land trappers are using cables and dog proofs. Live traps if you're trapping around houses and stuff. Um, yeah, it's they definitely don't use the gambit. It's just like I said, it's two completely different styles. But if you were to talk about like, do most of the water trappers use the same techniques? Do most of the land trappers use techniques? I would say there's a big commonality between how water trappers trap compared to how land trappers trap.
Mhm.
Every guy that goes and sets a cable is going to set it in a different spot. It may be 5 feet apart, it may be 3 inches to the left, 3 inches to the right, but everybody's going to set their cable restraint somewhere different, depending on how they see how that critter's running. Everybody's going to set their dog proofs differently. Me and Ryan have a very different outlook on where we're setting dog proofs for raccoons. Live traps, nobody's going to set the live trap in the same area unless you're around a house or a shed or a chicken coop. But with water trapping, I think you're looking for the exact same thing every time. You're looking for a beaver slide, you're looking for an otter slide, you're looking for a mink run, you're looking for a muskrat hut. You know, but yeah, like I said, I think water trappers kind of do the same thing. They're looking for the same things, and land trappers, there's a bigger differential there.
What would you say is your favorite bait to use for catching raccoons if you want to let that out?
Oh yeah,
Or,
I
or
mean,
trial bait?
yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Marciata's coon lure. You can get it at Cabela's. You can get it at most online stores. That stuff is like crack to them. I take dry cat food and sprinkle it in my trap, and then put some of that in there. It's real cherry smelling. Um, the end of the year, I graduated into making my own bait. I make it with oats, cherry, and some other stuff. But which, if it works well, this coming season will be available through Marsh Boys. Haven't figured out a name for it, but we'll see. Like I said, if it works, I'm hoping it does. I caught a couple raccoons off of it. There at the excuse me, there at the end of the year. I think my Prilosec's wearing off. But now I did. So when we first started trapping, and I think this is kind of counts for only catching six my first year compared to how many traps I set. I was using marshmallows and dry cat food. Um, Now, if you're on a coon trail, it'll work. Absolutely. That white will catch their eye. Even around a bait pile for if you're deer hunting, if you're sitting around your bait pile, it'll work because they're going to see it. But if you're not trapping around a bait site or a bait pile or on a coon trail, you're kind of like, like me. I trapped the end of this year. You saw it's kind of marshland.
Mhm.
So they're coming out of the marsh and coming up into the fields, and I'm trying to get them coming to the fields.
Right, coming off the marsh from them feet and going back through the field to cut to where they're going.
Yep. So I want something that they could smell. And it was honestly, I'm not saying a lot of these baits are shams because I'm sure all these baits work in different scenarios. But I could not find a bait that truly worked for me. I use sweet, I use fishy, I use fish oil pills. They caught a couple raccoons for me one year.
Oh wow.
But when I switched to that, oh yeah, just like your grandma pops, use them. Oh yeah, if you don't have anything else, go get them for $5 for 800 of them, and it'll work like a charm on cat food if you're trapping near water.
Mhm.
I don't use a lot of fishy scents, even if I'm trapping near water. I like I said, I used that Marciata stuff, and that was great. I caught a lot of raccoons off that this year. Otters, I don't bait for otters. We just set the snare. If I were to go the fox route, I'd probably find roadkill. I'd use a gland lure, something like that, to kind of get them moving in the right direction. You got to be 30 feet. Don't quote me on that. It might be 30 yards. I think it's 30 feet from any meat based. So a dead deer, dog food, anything like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah. I am super, super picky on my baits. I actually tried a synthetic corn gel this year, and I caught a raccoon off of it. I met a guy at Harrisburg at the Great American Outdoor Show, and he was an amazing salesman because I'd have never bought it in my life if it was on a shelf. But he talked me into buying it, and I think it caught two raccoons. Honestly,
I was gonna say, was he a snake oil salesman, or did it actually work?
I don't know. All these guys nowadays have enough people you can pro. I'm not talking shit on pro staffers because I think it's a great thing. We have a pro staffer ourselves. But I think there's enough guys that'll send you pictures of deer saying they used your stuff.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't quite call it snake oil salesman, but I think as close as you can get. And that's not discrediting any of the scent guys. It's what you got to do. You got to advertise. And it got me. It got me, and it worked. Like I said, it worked.
Hey, I found a name for your guys' bait. If you guys want to make that beta thing for you, Marsh Boys Coon Crack. Trademark it now.
So I was gonna go with coon crack, but there's too many of them already.
Oh, there is.
Oh, there's
Darn.
a lot of them.
I figured that'd be a popular one, but
I got a name in mind. I just got to do a little research, make sure it's original.
yeah, that's cool. What um trapping goals do you have for this upcoming year? Like, do you have a number you want to hit? Do you have a certain thing you want to trap? Like, I know you mentioned the otter. You want to try to pull that again?
Yeah, I'd like to catch an otter every year moving forward. I'm hoping the state of New Jersey pays attention to the guys that caught and reward them with permits the following year because it's not a big catch percentage. 2022 and 2023, the average was like 40 to 42% catch rate per permit handed out. And you're only, like I said, you're only allowed one, and it's all lottery draw. I applied my first year too, and I didn't get it. And my second year, I got it, and I caught it in 8 days. Like big shout out to Colby, absolutely. I actually just saw crossing into a property I have permission on was an otter hit on the side of the road. Um,
Oh wow!
yeah, right down the road from my house. So I'm going to apply for this zone this coming year, see if I can pull one. I know a couple different otter packs. Like I said earlier, 30 raccoons will be my goal every year until I hit it, and then it'll move to 60, then it'll move to 100, and it'll just keep going up. I'll never be satisfied catching as many raccoons as I can. Um, Fox, a gray fox is the number one canine on my list. I have trail picture cameras of a den of them, not a den, but pretty close to a den site. And it's just a really tricky place to trap because a lot of people walk their dog on it. They ride four wheelers. They do all that kind of stuff, and it's just like so. With that, I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that's kind of my goal is to catch another otter. I'm gonna apply for my beaver permit this year just to kind of see if I can do it. Muskrats are definitely on the hit list for me and Ryan, but raccoons, muskrats, and otters would be the main priority. But
Nice.
what I was gonna say, it's tricky being a trapper today. It's
Mm,
tricky being a trappers, me and Ryan, that run a social media page, that run a content page, that run a media page, whatever you want to call it. But we're putting our business out into the world for everybody to see. I was very, very nervous posting that otter.
Hmm.
I got one or two negative comments on it, and I deleted them and blocked those people. If they don't want to see it, they don't have to see it. There's a lot of backlash to be had, and
Yeah.
it plays into the Disney effect. It plays into TikTok. It plays into social media. But most people have never seen an otter in real life. Most people have never seen a beaver in real life. A lot of people haven't seen a raccoon in real life. And if the first engagement they have with that is me holding a dead one on social media, it's kind of tricky. Now, raccoons, I was never
Right.
nervous about posting. The community that follows us that we engage with is I knew would be fine with that.
Mhm.
Um, but to dive even more into that, what I was saying with the spot that I had gray foxes and I don't trap, I have never set a trap on that spot. It's basically a roadway with two locked gates on each end, but people cut the gates and ride their razors, walk their dogs, ride their bikes, do whatever. I actually have trail camera pictures of the game board and chasing guys on four wheelers through there. But so say I set a trap. Just say I set a dog proof. Kind of tucked in it's a lot of pines there, so you can see kind of through it and everything. Say 5 yards off that trail, I set a raccoon trap and I catch. You know, Monday through Friday, I'm checking between 4:30 and 6 o'clock at night. A lot of times in the dark. That's a lot of times. If that coon gets caught at between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning, for somebody with a dog, somebody on a bike to walk by and take a picture. Now, what happens? They're breaking the law initially by being on wildlife management area during hunting season without a hunting license doing non-outdoors activities. But what do? They'll take a picture, they'll post it on Facebook, and who's the asshole? Not the guy riding the horse, not the girl walking the dog, not the dude ripping it up on an ATV. Me. I'm the asshole because I trapped an animal.
Right. And I'm glad you brought it up because I kind of want to get in this a little more too as we're getting along with the trapping topic. But people don't realize how vicious and how predatory most of these species that people, and I want to say we because I'm into that group now because I have my trapping certificate. But we as trappers, people don't get that those are predatory things that
What people?
eat
Oops, sorry. Go
like
ahead. I didn't mean to
that
cut
eat
you off.
little birds like turkeys and waterfowl and stuff like that. Or even if in beaver sense, like beavers, they're big on property and all kinds of damage for things. And people don't really get that. And you mentioned it, they're Disney-tized or they're desensitized from just saying, oh, it's a cute little otter, or oh, it's a
Hmm.
cute little fluffy animal in the zoo, or oh, it's a cute little singing and dancing animated thing on Disney. No, that's not reality. I mean, and in reality, will you see them do some of their wild things in the zoo? Maybe if you're lucky. But for the most part, you just see them relaxing, hanging out, and chilling. You don't see a natural wild what they actually are.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. But I think the number one thing that people don't see is the overpopulation of fur bearers. Like I said, I caught 22 raccoons this year. I pulled from that property that me and you set. I pulled from that property early. Granted, I had a lot of things at home to do. Life was moving a little quick at the time, and I had to focus on, my bread and butter, my life and my woman.
Mhm.
Um, I easily could have kept trapping there for 3 weeks, and I probably would have kept two coons a day. Easily, if I would have moved my traps, after another week. People do not see the overpopulation. How often do you see a Facebook video of a fox or a coyote running through a suburban neighborhood?
Neighborhood, exactly. I
every
was just ready to
every
say it.
week.
Like
Um,
you see skunks and raccoons hit all the time on the side of the
hmm
road. Like, and people don't, and like, granted, we're a little more desensitized to it now because it's kind of like a normal thing with suburban expansion and all this and that. But it's still like not like you gotta be careful. They're wild animals.
yeah, me and Ryan looked it up one year. We didn't do a study. We did a study on a study. I think they did it in 2021. In New Jersey, there's an average of 23 raccoons per square acre. Acre. My grandmother's house sits on an acre and a half. They average it out to 23 raccoons per square acre in the state of New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah, that's from New Jersey Fish and Wildlife. That's not some bullshit media ad that was posted. That's from the state of New Jersey. Coyotes are a huge problem right now in the state of New Jersey. They have been for the last 10 years, I'd say.
Oh, even down
Um,
here, coyotes
uh,
are a big problem down
oh
here.
yeah, in the Northeast, coyotes are absolutely a big problem everywhere. Every state you go, Pennsylvania has a problem with them. Maryland has a problem with them. Delaware has a problem with them. New Jersey has a problem with them. And I don't think I want to take a bite of that piece. But I was gonna say, don't think Jersey's laws on coyote hunting are lax enough. But I think they're just fine. I
Hmm.
think they're very adaptable to guys who want to kill coyotes with a caller at night. Um, I think if they were to really recognize a problem with them, they'd allow open season on them all year. Some states do. Uh, I know raccoons. If you have a damaged raccoon, like if a raccoon's coming in and killing your chickens, you can kill him in August. You can at any time you could take a raccoon or a groundhog if they're causing problems. I know during turkey season you can take a canine at a
Yeah,
chance encounter.
you can take a coyote. I know that, and especially on the one property in Maryland because they're big deer hunters down there, and they're just letting, like I mentioned to you guys before, they're just letting me turkey hunt it because they don't really turkey hunt. But he was like, if you see any like foxes or coyotes, kill them
Oh yeah.
because they're just they're out of hand.
Hmm. I
I
agree.
mean, and even on the sense of okay, yeah, people will think coyotes and foxes are more aggressive because they're closer to like wolves, and like people are like, oh, even Disney-fied and animated-fied and mainstream media, foxes and coyotes kind of have negative connotations to them. So people are like, oh yeah, I can see that being dangerous. But people don't realize that raccoons and possums are just as mean, and your otter, like
Oh,
my
otters
dad.
are mean. Otters are real mean. I can't say the same about a raccoon. I've
Oh,
only
I can
ever
say
had
that about raccoon because my
no.
he's been in attics and stuff for work with Verizon and whatnot. And he's ran into him and they've tried to attack him, scratch him, jump at him.
I've trapped just under 30 raccoons, and I've only ever had one mean one. One.
Yeah,
Yep. Every single one I've come to, they sit there with their eyes closed or they're hunkered down. I've never even talking to Colby with the coyotes and the foxes, like and I'm not speaking to their nature. It's just I think
hmm,
just the way it is when they're in a trap. They're cowering.
yeah.
They're
Well, they know
hmm?
because they can't go nowhere. And they know, well, okay, well, something's got me, so somebody's coming to kill me at some point. Well, not to like make that sound as doom and
No, no,
gloom,
I
but
no, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah, I got you.
I mean, I don't want to put no more negativity on us that we have from saying that, but that's kind of just the easiest, dumbest way of saying it.
Yeah, there's talking about trapping needs to be done, and it's great to have conversations about it. It's just like you kind of mentioned, like you don't want to come off like that. It's really hard to talk about trapping because the
Mhm.
stuff we say that we understand between each other and we know what we mean is going to get taken completely different by some bitch on Facebook. um,
Mhm. Now, to the flip
just
side of that coin, you could, if not saying that we should be those people, but if you do want to say that to those people, be like, say, okay, you want me to go be this and mad about killing them, but I can guarantee most of the people that complain have some kind of faux fur product around that came
it's
from something like that, and they're just detached from it because they don't get it.
yeah, it's the exact same thing as vegans.
Hmm.
Vegans, how many vegans? I would love to take a poll. Just an anonymous poll. How many vegans use chapstick? Any kind of organic chapstick. You know what chapstick's made of?
Oil.
Pig fat.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of lip gloss, any kind of eyeliner, any makeup either has pig fat in it, cow fat. Any perfume has skunk essence in it. That's a
Or
big
beaver
thing.
essence.
Huh?
Or beaver, because I know beaver's a big one for perfumes too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Beaver castor. Skunk essence is a huge one in perfumes. Any kind of soap, any kind of organic soap
Mm-hmm.
has some kind of animal fat in it. They're animal fat in laundry pods. Tide Pods has animal fat in it.
Or
You know,
even
I
some certain gelatins are animal fat.
Jello, absolutely, yeah, or dry or dehydrated bone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people, there's plenty of credible sources. The USDA puts one out every so many years about common household products that use animal byproducts, and people just don't listen and, to be quite frankly, don't care. They just go out and post their shit and talk their shit, and that's what they do. They don't, you know. The biggest argument is, all these people that are spinach lovers, vegans, and all that. All the bugs they kill. Well, they could care less about a damn caterpillar in the grand scheme of things, as long as you ain't shooting a deer or I'm not butchering one of the cows I got out back.
Right.
Yeah, there's a flip side to every coin that they just don't want to open their eyes to.
Mm-hmm. Or they do, but they just choose to neglect it and don't want to accept that portion that, oh, I have that skin in the game in that way.
Yeah, and a big thing about that, and Steven Ranella does a great job. I haven't read the book yet. I just got into reading like a month ago. Um, Great hobby, and we're gonna start something on the podcast about books here shortly. I think.
Really?
Yeah, a
I've been
little segment, kind of recapping some books. Like, I read Zach Hansen's Turning Feral. Rebecca Renner wrote a book called Gator Country. I read. I'm reading Arctic Dreams by Barry Lopez now. Yeah, I've got I've gotten my nerdy side. My fiance is a big reader, and I kind of with having Zach on the podcast to kind of open my eyes to it again. But I believe Ranella has a book about how, and this is completely true, beaver trapping built west of the Rockies, California,
oh,
Oregon,
without a doubt.
all of that, the Rocky Mountains. The reason they were settled was not gold, but beaver trapping.
Beaver trapping because they needed the felt for the hats.
hmm I felt for anything. Hell, when I rode bulls, I had a beaver felt hat. I couldn't tell you what happened to it. I probably sold it because I was so broke running through them years. But I had a beaver felt hat. It was called a grizzly. I couldn't remember. I can't remember what brand it was, but they're called grizzlies. It was a beaver felt hat that looked like grizzly hair. It was the
Mm-hmm.
coolest thing I ever had. I probably sold it to pay my fees one day.
Traded it.
Yeah, yeah. Traded it to get on a bull that I probably fell off of.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the goals that you have, not just in trapping, but for the Marsh Boys brand as a whole?
So we ended up with our LLC. Me and Ryan filed for the LLC back in October of 24, and I don't ever expect myself to quit my day job and Marsh Boys be a full-time thing. That would be the ultimate long goal dream. Absolutely. I don't see it happening just because, the market's so flooded with what we do. We don't do it to make money. Money is a byproduct to help us fund mics and stands and podcasts and media equipment and to make more content, make more apparel. I think the goal would just be kind of to grow the podcast. Marsh Boys Outdoors was built on a podcast. We started the podcast, and then everything else followed. The podcast room followed. Like I said, we started in Jimmy Riley's living room on a plastic table. Hell, to think the first podcast we all sat either on the floor or on his couch. But yeah, I just want to reach more people. What Marsh Boys is truly, truly rooted in is showing people what New Jersey has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm smack dab in the middle of the epicenter of outdoors in New Jersey in Salem County. I could go. an hour west, an hour east, an hour south, an hour north, and I'm doing something completely different. I can go an hour west and hunt scoters on the bay, an hour east shoot black ducks on the Delaware River, an hour south and shoot wood ducks in one of the most
Fine. Flooded,
unpopular areas. What was that?
I said flooded timber, pines.
Yeah, you have flooded timber, pines. You have pine bogs. You have bay. You have rivers. You can trap raccoons. You can trap otters, beavers. You can, there's not huge whitetails, but there's really good deer population. Probably one of the most stagnant deer populations in the country.
Bear hunting.
You have the densest population of bears in the world. In the world. Most, and that's once again is a true fact. The densest populations per capita in the world is New Jersey.
Now, see, I knew Jersey had a lot of bears, not to cut you off, but I didn't know that that was a fact until Rogan said it. And I was like, and I looked into it,
Yep.
and I was like, holy crap. Like,
The world record bear was shot in 2024 in New Jersey, 770 pounds. The world record black bear.
that's the world record that they shot last year.
Yep. The biggest black bear shot in human history was New
Wow.
Jersey, North Jersey. Yep. That's
Dude,
something on the bucket list. I'm going to do. I hope to do this year. We have a lot. We make a lot of plans, but
well, I'll be up there doing it again probably if you guys want to tag along with me. I want to try because I did it last year at the end of the late bear season. I wanted to go to the early one because I know it probably would have had a better success. But
yeah, that was a whole funny situation when they opened the bear season back up. I think what was it? God, I could be so wrong on this. So when Murphy opened bear season, and that was like a very hush hush. I think Friday they announced it, and the bear season opened that Monday of that week.
mhm.
I think there were in the first 3 days there was 200 some bears killed.
Oh
Yeah, it was
man,
a it was a 5 day season the first year they opened it back up. So 23, I think it was closed in 22 when we started the podcast. I think they closed it like a month before the season started. So yeah, I want to say they opened it. Yeah. So I think 21 they may have closed it. 22 it was closed. 23 they opened it back up because I think I should be better at this because I live in this state. I think some little girl got attacked by a bear, and Murphy was like, "All right, we need to open it back up."
yeah, I was gonna say that because I'm surprised that there hasn't been no like attacks or like
Oh, there
big
was.
big things like that in the
Hmm.
news. Because
That's
for
well,
as local as I am, I would get it, but
yeah, and that's exactly what happened. Overpopulation of bears pushed into suburban deals in North Jersey, and they don't care about South Jersey, but the Democrats love North Jersey because that's where everybody is. Closer to New York, the better. But overpopulation of bears started creeping into the neighborhoods, and they were, hush hush, but they were like, hey, we should probably do something about this. And
yeah.
New Jersey hunters, it was like a free for all that week, man. Like I said, I would have to look it up if you guys want to look it up. New Jersey Fish and Wildlife posted it. I want to say like 300 bears were killed that week.
Wow.
Yeah, and then this year, I'm not even going to say because I can't remember. We talked about it on the podcast, but there was a lot of bears killed this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
Plus
lot
the
that
record.
wander down into North Delaware or something from up there. I mean, we've seen it.
Really?
You ever heard about the Delaware?
Uh-uh.
Yeah, there was one that wandered. There was a couple. Well, actually, within the past, from when I was in high school to now, there's probably been at least 5 to 7 bears that have wandered down. They've been in like
Really?
wet clay. Oh, yeah, there's been like 2 or 3 that have wandered around UD.
Yeah, I didn't know that because like where I'm at would be like if is like just south of the southernmost tip of the bear country.
Hmm.
Like 2 years ago when we got them big wildfires in the Pinelands, it pushed some bears south. But
Yeah.
I've never I've never heard of a hunter down here being like, yeah, I was deer hunting the other day and saw a black bear. I lied. I lied. I wasn't with them. I don't think I was with them. I may have been. My cousin was running coon dogs behind an old golf course. People that know us probably know what I'm talking about. The dog ran up on some lady's back porch, treated coon behind her house. And she came out and was like, hey, you better watch your ass. And she showed him trail camera pictures. Now, this is 15, 20 minutes south of me. And was like, "Hey, here's a picture of some black bear of a mama black bear, a sow black bear with cubs in the same woods like a week prior, or somewhere close to that." But that was like the closest to home that I ever had a black bear experience with. Now, I've never had a physical black bear experience.
Now, outside of bears, I know Jersey has some bobcat sightings up north that they don't like to admit, but
Yeah, there's a decent bobcat population in New Jersey. Same thing with fisher cats. I was actually just we're gonna have a trapper on. I don't know if we'll post it next week or the following week, but we're gonna have a local trapper on, and we got to talking a lot. And he lives pretty close to me and traps my township. And he said I was talking to him, and I brought up the fact that, I've had a couple people come to me and be like, "Hey, you trapped this property, right?" Like, yeah. It was like, "Well, I've seen fisher cats there," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And my cousin told me he saw a couple there this past year squirrel hunting, and I was like, "Well, that's a little more credible." And then talking to this guy, he's like, "Yeah, I've seen fisher cats. Absolutely, they run through there. There may only be a pair, four of them there, but you'll see them there." And then with the bobcat deal, it's the same way up north. There's a lot of videos coming out of bobcats in New Jersey. Not as much South Jersey.
but
You might
north.
have yeah, definitely North Jersey up in the more mountainous regions. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say a healthy bobcat population, but we have a decent enough bobcat population.
Mhm. Now, what is a fisher cat? I never heard. Oh, I've heard of them, but never like seen or
Ooh.
put any effort into.
Fisher cats are weird. It's like if you mixed, if you gave a mink steroids and it screwed
A house
a
cat.
hyena. Nah, it doesn't look like a house cat at all. It's got like a weird short face with a long snout, a slender long body, and a fluffy tail. They're really odd looking. You can trap legally one in PA every year. I know that. Uh,
You trap one in Jersey.
no, you can't legally harvest a bobcat or a fisher cat in the state of New Jersey. If you catch one, you have to contact DEP immediately. You can't even touch it, and they come out and they survey it, and they take measurements and then release it. But fisher cats are mean. Everything I've heard about a fisher cat is if you catch one, don't go bonking it on the head. Shoot it.
Interesting. As we're getting towards the tail end of it here, I did mention that I had a question to you or wanted to talk to you about the podcasting thing. From doing podcasts, and I'm I'm kind of guilty of it myself because I'm doing a podcast with you and started one. How do you feel that e- it seems like everybody wants to do a podcast in the hunting world now, or wants to try to do something like a podcast in the hunting world? How do you feel about that, or what do you see of that?
So I have no problem with it as long as you're original. So when we started the podcast, Ryan wanted to do more of a comedy podcast, more of a just kind of sit around and bullshit deal. And I told him, I said, look, we got to pick something. Like, let's look at our general area. What are people doing? Um, at the time, there had been maybe one waterfowl centric podcast in the state of New Jersey, and it died out throughout the years. Nobody was talking about trapping. Nobody was talking about, you get up close to Central Jersey, North Jersey, there's a lot of deer hunting podcasts. Not a lot, four or five. There's a good amount.
Mm-hmm.
But there was nobody really in the South Jersey area doing what we want to do. There's some media pages and stuff like that. Some really really good hunters, but like I said, there was nobody really doing what we wanted to do. So I brought the idea up to Ryan. I was like, I love to squirrel hunt. I deer hunt, and I love to waterfowl hunt. At the time, it was duck hunting, and then I grew into goose hunting. And then, of course, I got the dog, goose, and now it's all goose hunting for me. But there was nobody really doing that, as far as a podcast. There was, like I said, deer hunting podcast, one waterfowl podcast that was like hit or miss and was dying out. And we wanted to be really original and the best way to go about that was to talk about what we do in New Jersey and then expand. So for the first, like I said, 25 to 35 episodes, we were talking about our experiences, what we did, what we were doing, and everything. That went from all year round. We don't take any breaks with the podcast. I say that, but we just missed a week a couple weeks ago. We don't really take any long term breaks with the podcast. We are a weekly podcast advertised as so. And we wanted to keep things fresh. So we talk about fishing, we talk about hunting, we talk about everything. And now we're talking about trapping a lot. That even affects our content. But to get back to your question, like I said, I don't have a problem with it at all. I think people should share their stories if it's worth hearing.
Mhm.
I don't think Joe Schmo off the street should go buy $200 worth of podcast gear and spew shit out on the radio. But somebody's going to listen and he's going to keep doing it. And like I said, that's fine. It's just that's not what what really we do. And be original. You know, do it. Talk about if you're talking about what you love to do, whether that be sports. Let's even get into gaming, hunting, fishing, whatever you love to do. Talk about it. Somebody will listen. Even if they don't listen, if you're enjoying what you're talking about, it's worth putting it out there. You don't need a personality. You don't need a radio voice. I
Right.
sound like a Kentucky, North Jersey crossbred fuck, and I talk every week on the podcast.
Right.
I changed my car oil and I drink my coffee. So make that make sense. Um, but yeah, like I said, be original. That's all. That's
Hmm.
that's all. And we were kind of midway in the game of the podcast boom. We do all right. We do all right as far as listeners. We're about average, I would say, for podcasts. We're pretty good. I think last year at the end of 2024, we ended up 137th in outdoors podcast.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then you talk to guys like Jeff Coach who does the Pit Boss podcast, and he gets 40,000 downloads a year or in 6 months, and like we're not close to that. But
Right.
we do enough to keep it enjoyable, to know we're talking to new people, to spreading the word of New Jersey and what we're doing, and even like I said, we for Tanner Whitley, he's from Washington State. We've had him on podcast twice. Jeff Stanfield, he should be. We're trying to line up another podcast with him, and we're now reaching out to everybody. That's not because we're done talking about New Jersey. It's just we're broadening the horizons.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I said, to get back to it for the third time, as long as you're original, I don't have a problem with it. Don't don't
Yeah.
don't go out and I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to everybody that's out
Yeah.
there that has enough money to buy a podcast equipment. Don't copycat because it'll never get you there and you'll get repetitive. That's the one thing we don't want to do. And if you're talking to people and sharing their stories and getting the word out there, you're not going to be repetitive. It's going to be a good listen no matter what.
Exactly. And that's what kind of like when I through me starting it doing is what I was like, okay, yes, do we have granted, I'm saying we as like Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey. We I think and I know me and you have talked about this a couple times. I think we really do have under appreciated and overlooked like hunting scene and fishing scene as a whole for our area.
Yeah, I
Granted,
agree 100%. If
granted, it's big enough in certain areas, but as a whole, it's overlooked.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If what's the number one thing you hear when people talk about New Jersey?
New
Brook, New
York and the
Jersey,
Jersey Shore.
New York, New Jersey, the Jersey Shore, and Cape May. Yes, they're all in their own divisions, great places. I like the hardwoods of New Jersey. I
Hmm.
like I like the hillbillies, the rednecks, the white trash. That's what I am, and that's what we're trying to explore.
Hmm.
When you talk about Delaware, what do people hear? Dover Speedway, Christiana, and Rehoboth Beach, right?
And Wilmington.
Wilmington, yeah, if you want to count that.
Well, it's in there when you talk about Delaware.
Yeah.
But,
And
and
Maryland. What are you talking about? Ocean City, Maryland. Granted, Maryland has more real estate, and Maryland's a prestigious state in the duck hunting world. But
right, because they have the
you,
whole Eastern Shore and all that. But outside of duck hunting, people don't really consider West Maryland for bear and big deer. Or
Mhm.
consider the suburban areas for like fishing and like deer hunting and all that.
Yeah, I bought so when I was raising bucking bulls, the last breed bull I used was a guy from or from I forget where, but Western Maryland. It's beautiful out there. The
Oh yeah.
rolling hills, the little towns, everything. I went out there a few times for some bull ridings and to talk to guys that raise bulls out there and stuff like that. Like it's a whole different world than like Baltimore and that general area.
I mean, especially around where my area too, because there's a lot of like farm and Eastern Shore and like flat.
hmm And
And
that's
out
what
there,
people.
it's more mountainous, rolling hills. You got Harper's Ferry out there.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what people don't realize about New Jersey is you get to the Lumberton area, just south of Trenton, and then south, you're in Alabama. You know,
Hmm.
it's we got some hills. We got we're mainly below sea level, but just like the eastern shore of Maryland, but it's farm country. It's all farm country. Like when you get to Middletown, Delaware, and south, and into the eastern shore of Maryland, it's all the same kind of deal.
Yeah,
And
it's
people don't
all.
realize that.
Hmm. And not to get away from my what I was going to, but I've had. Granted, it's turkey season and down south, turkey's king, and I've had a lot of more southern people on the first couple episodes. But as I'm rolling into fishing season and whatnot, I do want to kind of get more home guys like you, and I want to get Riley on and get kind of like more of the word of our area out. Not to make it grow or say it's compared to like down south or out west or the Great Lakes breadbasket, Midwest deer country. Like it's not comparable to any of that, but it could hold its own in certain areas.
Yeah, like where else south of Maryland do you hear about guys catching 50-inch striper?
Hmm.
Where south of Maryland or and on the flip side of that, where north of Maryland do you hear guys catching redfish? Like I
Yeah.
know they used to run in Jersey, but like so we went to a game dinner. We sponsored one of Boondocks Hunting game dinners a couple weeks ago, and some of the people we met were some really interesting characters from like southern New York, northern Jersey, even like northeastern PA, like north of Bucks County and all that deal. And people you would never expect to catch a keeper size striper, to catch a weak fish or a bluefish, were showing us pictures of like these monster fish. Like it's a whole different culture when you get up here. The surf fishing culture in New Jersey was huge in the 90s and early 2000s. It's still big, but it's a lot of older guys doing it. You
Oh,
know, more.
even down here where us with the drive on beaches and stuff
Oh,
and
oh,
Lewis, it's still
yeah,
big.
absolutely. I'm not taking away from that. I'm just, kind of talking about,
Yeah,
I
I
was
know. I'm just
referencing
adding
what
on.
my,
I'm just
yeah,
adding
yeah, yeah,
on
yeah,
to keep the area so that way we're
yeah.
not just thinking, oh, it's New Jersey and that's it. And north,
No,
it's no,
well,
it's still a
I,
little more south. Like we're trying to keep everybody in the.
I discredit you guys a little bit because once you get over the Delaware Memorial Bridge, you guys call them rockfish, rock
Whoa, whoa,
bass,
whoa,
whatever
whoa,
the
whoa,
hell it
whoa,
is.
whoa, 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 whoa. Don't loop us into that. What
What
do
do you call them?
I call him Striper, and
All right.
I'm from the middle of Delaware, Middletown,
All right, that's fair. Well, all right,
and
so
I
sorry.
call
Once you get over the George Washington Memorial Bridge, then they're rockfish, and that's where my taste gets a little dirty for them. They're stripers. They're stripers.
now growing up around. Have I heard some people refer to them as rockfish? Yeah, but for the most part, anybody I know or like that's from Delaware or like anybody I associate with that fishes for striper, we can call them striper.
Yeah, I got you. I just had to throw that jab out there.
And they're not striper, they're striper.
Oh, there was a if anybody's interested in it, one of the best documentaries I've ever watched in my life. I believe it's called Fishing in Gotham City.
Oh,
It's on YouTube. It's a documentary about fishing in like Long Island and in Brooklyn, New York.
yeah.
There are some interesting characters there, but man, there are some dedicated fishermen.
And that fish, and not to discredit us, but that North New Jersey, Southern New York City fishery, a lot of people don't think about it, but they got some pretty interesting things up there, like bluefin tuna rolled through the Statue of Liberty. You can catch striper in that same day or
Mhm.
week.
Absolutely.
Like it's pretty interesting up there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
Do you have anything else for us tonight, sir? Or
No,
any like
I appreciate
anything
you
you'd
having
like to
me
get
on.
into?
What was
No,
that?
I said, is there nothing you want to get into or bring up?
No, I mean we covered a lot through this podcast, and I'm glad we did.
Oh yeah.
You know, like I said, I'm just very appreciative of the things I've done and what the people we've met in the podcast, including you and Blue Hen Outdoors, and um, I hope people enjoy what we talk about, what we post, and all that stuff. And if you want to check us out, the Marsh Boys podcast, we've changed it since to Wednesdays on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Video or Amazon Prime, Apple Podcasts. If you download a podcast app from the App Store on an iPhone, it's in there. Check out the YouTube channel. We're very slow with posting stuff on that, but we like to get good content for that. Check us out on Instagram, on TikTok at Marsh_boys. Like I said, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And when you guys go check out their stuff, make sure you start with episode 130. Not to say, but there's pretty cool guests on episode 130 of the Marsh Boys
Yeah.
podcast. But no, I appreciate you coming on tonight, and thank you for your time. And likewise, I appreciate meeting you guys, and you guys have me on your show like I did here. Hopefully, next time we have you guys on, we'll have Ryan with us, and we'll have some more interesting things being said and to talk about.
Oh, he's definitely a wild card for that. And right before we end. I do want to, and I always try to with podcasts that I get invited on. It wouldn't be possible without Ryan. I wouldn't have done it as much as I am the, if you want to call it, I am the teacher in this situation. You
Uh-huh.
know, I don't hunt alone anymore. I hunt with Ryan.
Hmm.
Ryan hunts with me. I've even learned stuff from him now.
Yeah.
If we've been best friends we talk to each other every day. We call each other every day on the ride home. We're like an old married couple. If you'd meet us out in public, you'd think we fucking hate each other.
Oh yeah.
But none of it would be possible without him. A lot of credit goes to him and the idea of it. It's just, you know, the groundwork was more me and the idealism was him and we put it together. And,
Hmm.
like I said, for the third time, it would not be possible without him. And, it sucks he couldn't come on tonight. He has
Yeah.
some stuff to do, but yeah, he's definitely the wild card. He keeps things interesting and it's good to get the perspective of the learning guy
Mhm. And
on
I'm
whatever
here
we
ready
talk
to
about.
say, I mean, granted, it does suck we didn't have Ryan on tonight, but you guys go check out their podcast, the Marsh Boys podcast. Ryan is definitely a good guy to hear some info from, and
Oh, just this
definitely,
past week, he had a gripe
definitely
with the
gives some
Pearl Harbor
content.
Memorial Bridge in Conshohocken. That's a good listen.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. Not for the reason you think, but
But all right, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for another episode, and we'll be back next week with Blue Hat Outdoors podcast. Thank you.
yes, sir. Have a good night.
You too.